Chapter 1: A Cabin Before Sunrise. Imagine first the ache of your back after months sleeping upon a straw-stuffed tick. Each stalk of straw crackles faintly when you shift. Some snap through the linen, pricking skin. The coarse wool blanket, dyed a muddy brown years ago, smells of lanolin and wood smoke. It keeps you warm enough, though never quite warm. Outside, the temperature hovers just above freezing. Spring has technically arrived, yet the plains keep their own calendar, hoarding frost in hollows and shadowed creek beds well into May. You roll to your side. Slivers of pale morning seep between crooked shutters, painting the wall in thin stripes. A horseshoe nail, hammered in for hanging shirts, glints where one beam meets another. Listen. Beneath the stove's occasional clink lies a softer sound. The cabin's tiny resident mouse rustling through yesterday's crumbs. He squeezes behind a crate of canned peaches, precious cargo mailed all the way from St. Louis, and a scrap of paper slides whisper loud in the hush. You might feel annoyed, were you not too tired to care. In one slow breath you swing your legs over the tick's edge. Bare feet meet floorboards cold as river stones. Each plank is the width of a man's hand, axe hewn, edges splintered. When your big toe skims a knot, fibers lift and threaten a splinter. You step instead onto a rag rug braided from old flannel shirts, their faded blues and reds now a smoke-gray blur. Time to coax the fire. You squat, knees popping. The stove is no larger than a washtub, its iron belly holding a feeble glow from last night's embers. With a thin stick you prod the ash, summoning a faint orange wink. You feed in 2 fingers of split cedar, light, fragrant, saved expressly for kindling. The cedar hisses, catching after patient coaxing from a scrap of newspaper headline you never finished reading. The first honest crackle fills the cabin, and a soft breath of heat brushes your knuckles. Already the air smells kinder, a mixture of sap-sweet cedar, yesterday's bacon grease clinging to the skillet, and something you can only label home, though you have lived here mere months. Next comes water. The bucket, banded in rusted metal hoops, sits by the door, half empty, last night's ration. You lift it, feeling the echo ache of yesterday's fencing work in your shoulders. Your breath changes, the iron handle bites. At the washstand, you pour a palmful into a chipped enamel basin. The water's surface shivers in the dim light, then stills, unflinching, mirror-like, until you break it with your cupped hands. Cold stings cheeks and eyelids awake. Tiny rivulets slip behind ears, down the neck, under the flannel collar that has been sewn and re-sewn. There is no soap, you ration it for true grime. A quick splash must suffice. You pat your face dry with a linen rag, so thin it is more memory than cloth. Outside the shutters, a rooster begins his morning sermon. 3 declarative notes, each louder than the last, bouncing off an unseen barn wall. From a second coop, another bird answers, half a tone off key. Their duet will continue until dawn is undeniable. You dress in layers, each telling a story of repair, wool undershirt danned at the elbows with thread pulled from a frayed cuff, trousers whose knees hide under dark patches, a vest inherited from a cousin who failed his fortune out west and limped home poorer than before. Over all this goes a canvas chore coat. Its brass buttons leave faint green ghosts, verdigris fingerprints, on the coarse fabric. Now boots. They rest by the stove, toes stiffened by countless dun-brown layers of dust and resin. Sliding a foot inside, you wiggle until the heel settles against cracked leather, then repeat with the other. Before lacing, you tip each boot to shake loose any scorpion or spider seeking warmth. Nothing falls, but the ritual comforts all the same. Finally, hat. It hangs on a peg above the door, brim warped by rain, crown pressed flat when you once sat on it mid-trail. The felt carries the faint musk of horse and juniper smoke. You center it high on your head, letting its familiar weight anchor your thoughts. By now cedar flames lick hungrily at yesterday's oak chunk. The cabin warms enough to keep breath from fogging. In their heat, beams release a sleepy creak, sap long ago dried but muscle memory still intact, groaning as if to say, another dawn, another chance to stand. You draw a chair, its seat a simple plank, its legs uneven, to the small square window. Outside, dawn grows bolder. Tufts of silver grass catch the light, each blade tipped in dew that glitters like scattered pinheads. A lone cottonwood leans slightly east as though yearning for sunrise. The world remains quiet save for rooster rivalry, a distant whicker from your mare in the corral, and the subtle hiss of stovepipe exhaling pine-scented smoke into grey sky. You sit without hurry, letting the scene imprint itself. Perhaps you hold a battered journal, ink frozen in the glass nib, words stalled mid-sentence until the cabin grows warmer. You could linger here, tracing knotted grain lines in the tabletop, but the day's chores loom with unspoken patience. Before long you will shoulder the yoke to fetch fresh water from the creek, 500 paces down a slope slick with last week's rain. You accept this not as burden but rhythm, the West's quiet metronome, ticking not by second or minute, but by tasks completed and sunlight spent. For now, breathe once more, deep, measured, slow enough that the cabin might mistake you for another sturdy beam. Let warmth trickle from the stove across your shins. A new sun yawns over the horizon, and with it, our journey truly begins. Chapter 2: Hardtack and Chicory. Breakfast on the frontier is neither lavish nor quick, yet it holds a certain ceremony, performed daily with objects as familiar as one's own heartbeat. The first piece of the ritual is hardtack, a name that feels blunt in the mouth, befitting a food that barely recognizes teeth. Picture it, a square no bigger than a palm, pale as bleached linen, thickness of a child's thumb. Its top bears 4 neat rows of punctures, dockings, bakers called them, meant to discourage puffing in the oven so the biscuit dries evenly into its famously stubborn state. Years after baking, it will remain unchanged, waiting with unflappable patience for human hunger. You grasp a piece, wrapping it against the table. The sound is more knuckle on door than bread. To eat it dry courts cracked molars, so you nestle it inside a tin cup and ladle in scalding chicory brew, letting heat soften soldier-hard edges. Chicory itself is not coffee, though your tongue might be fooled in half-light. Its roots, roasted deep umber and ground to fine dust, yield a drink darker than most rivers and only faintly reminiscent of the imported beans some towns advertise at ruinous prices. Chicory is plentiful, free for the digging along meadow edges. It asks only the labor of washing, chopping, slow roasting in a blackened skillet until aroma curls like sweet smoke. You pour the brew with care. Tin groans at sudden warmth. A plume of steam rises, catching sunrise and bending light into ghost rainbows that vanish too quickly for wonder. You wait, perhaps counting silent heartbeats, until the biscuit's underside yields, turning sponge soft while its top remains tenaciously firm, providing a texture your jaw may respect. As you lift the cup, its rim kisses chapped lips still recovering from yesterday's wind. The first mouthful holds notes of burnt sugar and damp earth. Beneath them lingers a whisper of bitterness, a flavor that feels oddly companionable at this hour. You chew softened biscuit quietly, each bite releasing faint echoes of chicory into the air. breakfast seldom travels alone. From a hook by the stove dangles a strip of salt-cured fatback, the frontier's answer to convenience food. You cut a sliver, translucent and streaked ivory pink, and lay it in the skillet. The iron hisses like distant rain hitting a hot street. Slowly, fat renders, pooling in shimmering puddles that promise both calories and flavor. Into this liquid you may crumble another shard of hardtack, letting it brown just enough to flirt with crisp edges. Or you might crack a precious egg, if hens have been generous and coyotes lazy. The scent, though humble, weaves through cabin boards, curling around nails, seeping into coat fibers until even afternoon chores will carry faint memories of this meal. A spoon, its bowl worn thin by constant scraping, stirs the pan. You listen to sizzle soften as moisture evaporates, leaving behind quiet pops, tiny applause for your patience. When food is ready, you tip contents onto a tin plate, edges still warm from the stove shelf. Seating yourself by the window again, you eat slowly. Outside, prairies shift color from pewter to mist blue to muted gold. Each swallow lays a small foundation for the day's work, one for the muscles that will lift fence posts, another for the mind that must stay sharp while bartering at the trading post. Between bites, you survey cabin shelves. There rest glass jars of dried beans mottled like snowflaked granite, a cloth sack of coarse salt, 2 dwindling onions plaited at their stems, and a lone twist of molasses-tinned candy waiting for Sunday. Such inventory taking is not idle fussing. It is frontier mindfulness, knowing at all times the precise weight of your larder. You refill the cup, not because thirst demands it, but because warmth in hands feels luxurious in this drafty world. With mug resting against your palms, you note faint dents pressed by years of campfires and pack rides. Every scratch narrates a journey, each ridge, a dusty road, each pit, a sudden hailstorm. Outside, the rooster grows tired, ceding the stage to meadowlarks whose liquid trills drift lazily over grass. Your mare stomps once, perhaps shooing a meddlesome fly. Sunlight breaches fully now, sliding a bright band across table planks, illuminating flower dust you missed in last night's sweep. Particles glow, then vanish as sun climbs. Meal concluding, you tilt the plate, letting rendered fat slide into a tin can beside the stove. Nothing is discarded. Tomorrow's beans will beg for that very richness. You wipe skillet with a scrap of burlap, swiping circular until its surface shines black and familiar. Breakfast has consumed nearly an hour, time modern appetites may label wasteful. Yet here, ritual pace fortifies the psyche. It reminds you the day may demand flesh, but it need not devour spirit. Slow chewing, deliberate wiping, mindful counting of jars. These are tiny rebellions against the West's harsher demands. Before stepping outside, you rinse tin dishes at the water barrel, careful to spill none. A film of grease briefly rainbows atop the water, then breaks apart, fleeing toward wood grain as you lower the mug. You wipe dry with flannel, hang cloth near the stove, and reach for the water yoke, a crescent of shaved ashwood shaped to nest across shoulders. 2 empty pails dangle from leather straps, eager to be filled. As you lift the yoke, its weight settles like practiced hands upon collarbones. Outside the cabin door, sunrise has advanced, brushing everything in a mellow gold that promises warmth if clouds stay away. The smell of damp earth rises. Last night's frost now recedes into soil, leaving a faint mineral tang. You pause here, in the threshold, to inhale a final time before labor. It is a breath flavored by chicory, by cedar smoke, by the faint sweet salt of cured pork. A breath that draws the morning inside you and etches it, gently, on the memory. then step forward, pail swinging. Each footfall on packed dirt sounds dull, calm, resolute. A day, long and quietly arduous, waits to unfold. The creek glints in the distance like a torn ribbon of slate. And somewhere beyond, grasshoppers ready their midday chorus, oblivious to the fact they will be among your only companions on the path. Chapter 3: The Long Walk to Town. Boot soles press into soil still silvered by dawn frost. Each step issues a muted crunch, the sound of crystals surrendering to body heat. Clara's mare ambles behind, reins looped over the woman's forearm, head low enough that warm breath pools like phantom mist around flared nostrils. The trail, a meandering crease through sage and buffalo grass, knows her weight intimately. She has walked it 56 times since March, a number she counts not out of boredom but for the comfort of round figures. The distance to town is 6 miles, yet miles on the prairie behave like deep breaths, stretching or shrinking depending on clouds, wind, and frame of mind. Early minutes pass inside a soft hush. Wind slips around skirt hem, teasing fabric into slow waves. Ahead, the horizon wears a veil of lavender, morning still negotiating with sun about the day's color scheme. Somewhere left of the trail, a meadowlark clears its throat, unleashes a liquid trill, then retreats into silence as if embarrassed by its own candor. Clara counts her pace in groupings of 4. Inhale on 1, exhale on 2, gentle pause through 3 and 4. This rhythm renders distance malleable, the way a lullaby bends time for an infant on the verge of sleep. She tick marks landmarks without urgency. There, a split fence post leaning like an old philosopher. There, a huddle of prairie dog holes, each rim ringed by crescent mounds that catch low light and briefly glitter. Step after step, tiny stories present themselves. A beetle trudges across the trail, dragging a grass seed twice its weight, miniature twin to Clara's own pilgrimage. A milk-white pebble, smooth as river glass, winks from dust. She pockets it, a silent wishstone to turn over in later idle moments. At the half-mile mark, the first beads of perspiration bloom at her temples. She loosens the canvas duster's collar. Cool air laps the newly bared skin, bringing with it the faint scent of damp clay, evidence that groundwater still lingers beneath drought-bleached surface. The mare huffs, ears flicking flies that have slept inside sunrise. Clara offers a soft TSK of reassurance, and horse and human settle into companionable quiet. They need not speak to share thought. The road is long, but it was always meant to be. Time slips, the sun climbs. Its warmth feels like being looked at kindly. Clara removes her hat, lets breeze comb sweat-slick hair for half a minute, then replaces felt with renewed gratitude for shade. Behind her eyelids, should she close them, the world glows orange-pink, an interior dawn. A mile marker of sorts appears. 2 wagon ruts veer into the main trail, their edges crusted where last evening's thunderstorm briefly turned earth to pudding. Clara kneels, touches one rut, leather glove meeting clay that is now brittle as pie crust. She imagines the wagon's occupants, perhaps a peddler, perhaps a family chasing rumors of fertile acres farther west. The track, already powdered by sun, will survive only a few more winds before erasing that narrative entirely. She stands, arches back, stretches arms overhead, fingers splaying like bare branches. Vertebrae unlock with a muted series of clicks. Somewhere deep behind ribcage, lungs expand enough to taste altitude. The trail rises onto a subtle ridge. Cresting it, she stops, half from awe, half from instinct. because valleys on either side appear as inland seas of grass, each blade rippling in choreographed sighs. To watchers sheltered by warm beds and glowing screens many decades hence, such vistas might seem cinematic. To Clara they are ordinary, yet not common. Ordinary as breathing, uncommon as breath viewed in slow motion. She resumes. Gravity now aids her, but downhill steps demand vigilance. Small stones masquerade as firm ground, threatening to roll ankles. The mare negotiates slope more casually, four-legged certainty ticking against soil. Mid-morning slides closer. Sunlight strengthens, nudging fragrance from sage into something almost minty. Clara fishes her hand-carved canteen, cartonwood body, beeswax seal, from stolbag. Water meets tongue cool, tasting faintly of iron. She shares a tin cup with the mare, who laps delicately, upper lip whiskers wicking stray droplets that sparkle then vanish. Another mile yields a surprise. A lone cartonwood sapling thrust from prairie floor where no stream runs on the surface. Clara approaches, presses palm against its trunk, and feels an almost musical vibration, sap climbing, invisible but urgent. She wonders if a seed traveled here in a coyote's tail, in a crow's gut, or by sheer stubborn wind. She whispers, "Grow slow, little one," then trudges on, leaving blessing behind like a coin at a shrine. Noon is not yet declared, but sky adopts that washed-out blue hinting hunger. Clara fishes a single boiled potato from stolbag, still cold, skin wrinkled. She eats it in 8 bites, sprinkling each with pinches of coarse salt stored in a twist of paper. No feast, but sustenance enough to soothe stomach from growl to purr. Gradually, the rough outline of town materializes. A roofline here, a crooked telegraph pole there, smoke from a blacksmith's forge painting vertical smudge against widening firmament. Distance has a final trick, keeping the target suspended, never seeming nearer. But Clara has learned not to measure. She simply keeps pace with her own shadow until the earth changes beneath her boots. And then it happens. Dust beneath step becomes compressed, bearing wheel ruts, boot prints, and the occasional horseshoe half-moon. Soundscape shifts, wind still dominant, yet woven now with human threads. The dull thud of mallet meeting wood, a dog barking twice then forgetting why, the clatter of a dropped bucket on plank porch. 6 miles, 100 gentle scenes, and nearly 2 hours of whispered horizon later, Clara's day tether has lengthened by exactly 1 town. She pauses at its outskirts, adjusts hat brim, and observes her mare's ears pivot like weather vanes, sampling new noises. They share a brief glance, unspoken promise that they will leave together too, and step into the first true shade cast by anything man-made since sunrise. Chapter 4: Trading Post Etiquette. The trading post sits at the crossroads of 2 ambitions, the East's dream of expansion and the West's dream of staying exactly as it is. The building is squat, splashed with sun-bleached paint that once pretended to be white. A sign squeaks overhead, Th. Stoddard Goods and Sundries, letters faded to the color of weak coffee. Clara tethers her mare to a hitch rail polished by years of rains, pats the animal's neck, 5 slow strokes, each a promise, then mounts the porch, boots echoing against unsteady boards. She pauses, habit, respect, self-centering, and wipes dust from coat sleeves. Trading, she knows, is part purchase, part performance. A bell jangles as the door swings inward. Inside, light filters through ceiling-high windows mottled with fly specks, creating a mosaic of honey-colored squares on oak floor. Odors gather here the way stories gather in saloons. Cured leather, lamp oil, dried apples, new rope, and, ineffably, the mid-notes of distant oceans still clinging to crates of salt cod. Behind a counter stands Mr. Stoddart himself, graying whiskers, spectacles perched upon nose, vest buttons straining to hold decades of ledgers and penny candy secrets. He greets Clara not by name, names are rare currency out here, but by respectful nod. In return she tips hat brim precisely 2 fingers width. No more, no less, etiquette measured as carefully as flour on his brass scale. Shelves line all 4 walls, each a miniature geography. Canvas bolts, undyed, indigo, calico dotted with rose, stack in neat columns. Wooden bins cradle pinto beans, rice, rolled oats. Higher shelves house lantern chimneys, rifle cartridges, tin spoons shiny as frost. A row of glass jars glows amber with sorghum syrup. Another contains pickled beets dyed so crimson they appear almost lit from within. Transactions here follow choreography older than any written handbook. Clara produces her trade goods, a rabbit pelt brushed until it lies like satin, and 3 fresh eggs cushioned in braided grass nest. Mr. Stoddard lifts each gently, weighing quality with fingertip and trained squint. Satisfied, he sets them on scale, adds small brass weights, and consults mental conversion charts that reside somewhere behind his spectacles' glare. He slides a ledger forward, graphite dancing across ruled lines. 1 pelt, 3 eggs, credit 12 cents. Credit, not cash. Coins remain scarce. Clara's previous purchases have left her 2 cents in arrears, so today she technically commands 10 cents. She glances at shelf of coffee beans, prized, exotic. A small scoop costs 15. She looks instead to sack of coarse salt, for cents per pound. Salt is certainty in a fickle pantry. She requests ½ pound. The clerk measures salt into brown paper, folds corners with origami precision, and ties packet using linen thread thin as spider silk yet resilient enough to hold a year. He scribbles new balance, credit remaining, 8 cents. Clara's gaze drifts to jar of peppermint sticks standing like a lighthouse amid utilitarian staples. 10 sticks for a penny. She debates. Sugar is indulgence, yet sweetness, like laughter, can season monotony in ways lard never could. She clears her throat, a volume reserved for whimsical decisions, and requests 2 pennies worth. Mr. Stoddard smiles as though recalling his own childhood winters when peppermint stood in for Santa. He counts 20 sticks, wraps them in wax paper whose translucence suggests halo around every stripe. Ledger adjusts, credit remaining, 6C. She next selects a skein of thread the color of tree bark, destined to repair skirt hem frayed by sagebrush claws. 2 cents gone. 4 remain. Enough for kerosene? She checks shelf. 5 cents per pint. She must decline. Lamp will have to burn leaner. Credits roll forward like careful seeds for leaner seasons. Throughout this litany, spoken words remain sparse. Instead, courtesies weave through small gestures. Clerk turning scale so customer can see numbers. Clara laying pelt first side up to honor creature's dignity. Both parties waiting extra heartbeat before finalizing ledger, allowing space for haggling that neither chooses to invoke today. Purchase concluded, Mr. Stoddard offers an unexpected gift. A heel of hard cheese beginning to crack along rind. Won't keep in this heat, he murmurs. Clara accepts with softness in eyes more eloquent than thanks. As she tucks parcels into stall bag, store sounds sharpen briefly, the quill nib scratching ledger, the subdued tick of wall clock marking moments that elsewhere might hold more drama. Here, they simply mark life continuing in quarter-hour increments. Clara lingers near a barrel of nails, letting fingers sift cold metal. Each nail lies dormant dream of new barn walls, of roof shingles snug against blizzard. She inhales metallic tang, pockets memory. Before leaving, she writes on a tacked notice board, stub pencil, looping hand, looking to purchase bee supers this autumn. Will trade wool, buttons, or labor. Word of need travels fastest along wood. Door opens, bell trills, sunlight spills in like applause. Town's single thoroughfare greets her with midday glare, dust swirling in miniature dervishes. She unties mare, feeds one peppermint stick because horses, too, deserve surprises. Snack accepted, the animal wrinkles lips, eyes half closing in equine bliss. Clara breathes once, deep, dusty, real, then tips hat toward the store whose walls now hold record of her morning. Scribbled in pencil graphite sure to smudge but never truly vanish. Trading complete, she feels pantry heavier, yet spirit lighter, buoyed by the quiet arithmetic of necessity and kindness. Behind her, the bell hushes. Ahead, the long trail home awaits, this time under harsher sun, yet softened by the knowledge that Stolbag sways with salt, thread, sugar spirals, and a sliver of cheese that will taste like communal grace come supper. She steps off porch. Boots meet earth. Dust puffs. Small ceremony marking end of commerce, resumption of pilgrimage. Somewhere beyond town edge a lark resumes its fractured hymn, and wind, ever patient accompanist, carries melody toward a horizon that always welcomes the unhurried traveler. Chapter 5: High Noon Heat. High noon on the prairie is less an hour and more a verdict. The sun, now judge and jury, weighs every traveler with an unblinking stare. Clara feels its scrutiny first along cheekbones where sweat gathers like reluctant pearls, then at the nape of her neck where fabric drinks moisture and offers it back as humid breath. Even the mare's hoofbeats grow languid, each step a dusty punctuation mark trailing ellipses of powdered earth. The street behind her kerneled into silence. Heat pushed citizens indoors, shutters half closed, leaving only a dog dozing beneath the upturned wagon, one ear twitching at dreams of cooler seasons. Wooden facades bleed resin, amber tears glinting before they harden mid-drip. Nails expand in their holes with tiny pings, an orchestra of squintangul misset notes. Clara counts shade patches as though they were rations. 30 paces of sunlight, then a merciful slice cast by the smithy's awning. 3 seconds reprieve to roll shoulders, sip warm water from canteen. She swishes, lets liquid rest on tongue, not swallowing until brief coolness evaporates from inner cheeks. Beyond town the trail reclaims her. No landmark here grants ease. Even grass lies flat, blades too parched to sway. Heat waves rise in quivering stacks. Duplicating horizon lines the way a hall of mirrors delays escape. Insects trade morning melodies for a shrill, metallic drone. Cicada hymn to perseverance. Clara tilts hat brim, narrows eyes to crescent slits. Sun leaches color until sight resembles aged tintype. Browns and silvers, all midtones cooked away. She reminds herself that movement at half speed conserves strength. The West rewards pacing, punishes hurry. She reaches into Stolbag for peppermint stick, snaps it in half, tucks shard in cheek. Sugar dissolves slowly, overlaying heat with a brief snowfall of sweetness. One for her, one saved for evening when the sky bruises violet and body will demand proof of beauty. The mare lags. Clara stops, fingers combing forelock damp as river reed. She whispers nonsense lullaby, sounds soft enough to skirt exhaustion's frayed nerves. They share canteen, 2 gulps apiece, then resume, hoof and boot printing alternating Morse code across beige dust. Somewhere a raven croaks, lumbering across blinding firmament. Its silhouette seems painted directly on sky, refusing parallax. Only ragged wing edges prove life. Clara envies the bird's altitude breeze, yet does not covet flight. For up there, too, sun reigns absolute. At mile marker, an upright stone bearing no inscription but memory, she kneels. Ground radiates upward like open stove door. Still, she presses palm to soil, greeting heat instead of fighting it, acknowledging day's dominion. Some wisdoms arrive only when resistance melts like tallow. She stands, removes duster despite scorched light. Fabric now a quilt of sweat. Underlayer cotton breathes fractional relief. She ties coat across saddle, where it will bake but lighten her spine. Thoughts drift. She maps family names onto clouds faint as chalk smears. Mother is the thinnest streak refusing to vanish. Father the sturdier clump rumbling at horizon. Siblings tiny wisps chasing each other until sun wipes slate clean. Meditation by mirage. Noon finally tilts, minute hand crossing invisible summit. Shadow at her feet lengthens by a finger width. The prairie's subtle assurance that punishment has peaked and shall now recede grain by grain. Clara exhales as though holding breath since dawn. Wind stirs, warm as exhaled bread oven air yet welcome. It lifts hat brim edges, carries away evaporating sweat, leaves behind salt lace on brow. With shade still hours off, these moving gusts are mercy renamed. She studies mare's flanks, ribs rise fall steady, nostrils flare, but gait remains sure. Satisfied, she hums him once taught in schoolhouse, syllables slow, vowels elongated until each note becomes small hammock for weary thoughts. Heat does not dissipate, yet mind drifts slightly above discomfort, tethered by melody. A lone tumbleweed rattles across trail, skeleton ballerina spinning to unheard waltz. Clara pauses to watch until it lodges in barbed wire fence half broken from last winter's ice. Even tangle of thorns gives welcome variation to otherwise straight horizon. By the time canteen rings empty, a cottonwood grove shimmers ahead, verdant mirage coalescing into truth as distance shrinks. Beneath its shade sleeps a shallow creek, often dry by August but today offering ribbon of stubborn silver. They reach water. Mare slurps, belly deep, blowing bubbles. Clara kneels, scoops handful, slashes wrists, forearms, cheeks. Cooling shock hums nerves awake only to hush them deeper. She refills canteen, adds 2 drops of iodine from cork-stoppered vial, weights counts of 60. High noon now ebbs into early afternoon. Light softens from crucible white to warm brass. Clara sits on root buttress, shoes off, toes burrowing into damp mud, luxury richer than peppermint. She closes eyes, listens, creek chuckle, leaves applauding lazy wind, distant locust pulse subsiding. When she rises, sun behind her shoulder, the trail seems less accusation, more invitation. Its dust no cooler, yet spirit newly watered. She and mare step out, silhouettes crossing boundary between heat's fiercest trial and long, forgiving slope of day's remainder. Chapter 6: Mending Fences, Literally. Fence repair is a dialogue between human intention and outdoor stubbornness. The wire remembers winter's weight, summer's heat stretch, and every hoof that leaned too hard. Clara begins conversation by laying tools on ground as if offering peace tokens. Hammer with head pitted from years, pouch of U-shaped staples, coil of barbed wire that glints like captive lightning. First, The post. Cedar, cut last spring, cured since in shaded stack. She rolls old post from hole, wood spongy, rot scent earthy sweet like mushroom. New post slides in. She tamps soil with heel, each stomp a heartbeat the prairie feels. Wire next. Old strand droops, barbs dulled. She cuts, threads fresh length through leather-gloved hands. Rhythmic hiss. Anchors one end round corner post, twists until wire sings, a taut, high note vibrating forearm bones. Unrolls along line, barbs catching late afternoon sun, flaring miniature stars. Hammer rises, falls. Staple bites cedar with satisfying sechau-NK. She times breaths with strikes, inhale lift, exhale drive, meditative percussion. After third staple, she pauses, irretuned. Distant thunder muttering beyond horizon. Storm hours away, but its whisper reminds her to hurry without haste. She moves down line. Grasshoppers bound aside, clicking protest. Meadowlark regards from thistle perch. Each staple secures not only wire but promise to cattle that boundaries will hold come nightfall. In prairie algebra, good fences equal fewer strays, fewer miles chasing hooves beneath moon. Sweat beads again, though sun eases. She wipes brow with kerchief smelling faintly of peppermint and salt. Between posts she checks tension. Thumb press, recoil. Too slack invites escape. Too tight risks snap in freeze. She splits difference, trusting feel over numbers. At midpoint a snag. Ground dips where burrowing critter undermined footing. Post leans outward like sleepy sentinel. Clara digs heel, deepens hole, adds stones for ballast, packs with clay. Hands come away streaked russet. She studies lines in palms, life's map redrawn by soil each day. Break. She sits on overturned bucket, sipping now cool creek water. Thunder grumbles louder, baritone rolling through ribs. Cloud wall bruises sky westward, indigo against wheat gold light. Smell of rain, mineral, sharp, rides first scouting breeze. She gauges distance by flash to rumble count, 9 seconds. Storm may skirt north or barrel through. Forecasts here written in crow flight, not newspapers. She quickens pace, yet motion remains deliberate. Haste births crooked staples. Final post. She plants it firm, twists last length, drives last staple flush, wire thrumming like plucked fiddle. Steps back, wipes hands on skirt, surveys line. Straight, gleaming, ready to shrug whatever weather plots. Satisfaction settles like shawl across shoulders. Mare knickers. Clara turns. Horse ears pivot to storm front as lightning forks silently. She unties reins, strokes sweaty neck. Home, she murmurs. They start east, fence at their backs holding ground against coming dark. As they walk, first cool drops tap hat brim. Slow, exploratory. Petrica blooms, world inhales. Clara lifts face, lets rain bead eyelashes, wash sweat, blur hard edges of day. Fence behind them creaks once in rising wind, as if testing new joints, then holds. Thunder applauds. Clara smiles, pocketing moment deep where future hardships cannot steal it. In frontier ledger, one more task balanced, one sliver of order coaxed from sprawling wild. Chapter 7, Hygiene, or lack thereof. Evening on the prairie does not bring glamour, but it does bring water warmed by patience and a momentary illusion of cleanliness. Clara begins her twilight wash by lowering the kettle from the stove. Iron Belly exhales a sigh, letting go of simmering creek water that now quivers with reflected lamplight. She pours carefully, half into enamel basin, half into tin mug for teeth scrubbing, to stretch scant heat across multiple rituals. Soap here is not the perfumed luxury of city parlors, but a coarse grey bar birthed from rainwater, lard scraps, and wood ash lie boiled 3 mornings straight. When new it carried a caustic tang that scalded careless fingertips. Months later it has mellowed to gritty benevolence, edges rounded like river stones. Clara slices off a wafer with jackknife, reserves the nugget for hair washing in 2 weeks' time, and sets remaining stub aside for tonight's simple ablution. She sleeves forearms, squeezes rag until steam feathers upward. First pass over cheeks lifts prairie dust, sun-dried sweat salt, and the fine grit of pulverized granite wafted on afternoon gusts. Cloth turns beige in one swipe, evidence that hard work coats skin with its own topsoil. She scrubs gently behind ears where salt rings hide like forgotten jewelry. Then along hairline, tracing hatband's ghost. Rag travels downward, neck, collarbone, wrists, each region granted its own moment of pressure and release, a silent acknowledgement that these muscles served faithfully all day. Teeth come next. She dips twig end of discarded willow switch, gnaws until fibers flare into bristles, then scours enamel with tin mug's warm water mingled with fine river sand and a whisper of baking soda. It is no mint cascade, yet grit polishes molars until tongue detects smoothness like fresh planed wood. Lips rinse, spit arcs into slop bucket destined for garden, calcium to feed next spring's beans. Nothing wasted, even used mouth water returns to soil in measured economy. Hair receives rare attention tonight. She unpins bun, letting braid unravel down spine like creek weed newly free of current. Wooden comb, one missing tooth, begins its slow pilgrimage from nape to ends. Snags catch at wind-snarled knots. She eases them with fingertips slicked by a single droplet of goose grease, the frontie's closest cousin to conditioner. Each stroke releases tiny static pops, faint but satisfying. Dust motes freed from strands drift into lamplight, swirling galaxies that disappear once beyond glow. The act is half grooming, half meditation. Counting comb passes, noting scalp's temperature, listening to joint symphony of wooden teeth meeting coarse hair. The modest ritual closes with garment airing. She peels away cotton drawers and skirt, hanging them near stove where ember warmth nudges moisture to flight. A clean petticoat, washed last Sunday, crisp with lye scent, slides over shoulders like cool moonlight. She splashes remaining warm water over calloused feet, massaging arches until pulse slows. Now, in stillness lit by single lamp and shy ember glow, Clara feels a fragile rebirth. Not the sparkling transformation promised by novels, but a pragmatic reset. Skin less gritty, breath tasting faintly of soda and willow, hair surrendered to gravity rather than grit. She snuffs lamp wick with moistened fingertips. Tiny hiss, sudden dark. Cabin interior shrinks to singular glow of stove door, a low red rectangle pulsing like a slumbering heart. She crawls into straw tick, blanket drawn, and lies listening to new night symphony. Wind threading chinks, mare stamping outside, and distant thunders afterthought far off to the south. Should sleep claim her swiftly, the modest water rights will have done their job. Yet if eyelids hover, she counts heartbeats against ember pops. 30 pops and she exhales. 60, and mind loosens its grip. These frontier hygiene moments are not about chasing purity. They are about honoring the body that must carry tomorrow's burdens. Even a half-gallon of creek water and a crumble of lye soap can whisper, "You did well today, rest now." And so the basin rests, tepid and clouded, waiting for dawn to baptize garden soil. The rag hangs limp, cooling, aromatic with wood smoke and lavender leftover from an ancient sachet stitched into its seam. Slowly, Deliberately, cabin darkness folds around Clara like the softest imaginable cloth. If your own eyes grow heavy, follow her into that cloth. Let breaths lengthen, limbs fall slack, and trust that dust, sweat, and cares alike have been washed just far enough away for dreams to find clear landing. Chapter 8: Mid-Afternoon Ailments. The frontier does not wait for Sunday to dispense its small trials of flesh. Mid-afternoon often delivers a catalogue of aches earned by morning labor. Splinters under nail, sundull headache, blistered heel, mosquito welt whispering infections threat. Clara addresses them in order of protest. First the splinter, oak brown sliver lodged crooked under left forefinger pad, courtesy of fence post tamps. She tongues pinch of sugar to quell laudanum's bitterness, sterilizes sewing needle over flame until metal glows dull cherry, and breathes out steady while tip coaxes wood shard free. Tiny bead of blood wells. She presses scrap of linen, watches crimson bloom then calm. Wound small, relief significant. Headache next. Sun-hammered temples all noon. Now each blink reverberates behind eyes like footfalls in empty church. She measures 8 drops laudanum into pewter spoon. Never 9, memory warns. The tincture smells of opium smoke soaked into cherry cordial. She tips spoon gently, amber waterfall against tongue, chases with swig of tepid creek water. While remedy unfurls, she opens ledger of home cures. If head pain persists, brew willow bark decoction. Simmer 10 minutes. Add yarrow for bitterness if stomach unsettles. She reads these notes aloud in whisper, reinforcing knowledge scratched there last winter when fever stole 3 neighboring children. Kettle now chatters soft on stove. She drops curl of willow bark, watches water cloud pale tan. Steam carries faint aspirin scent, salicin waiting within bark's marrow. She lets mixture deepen to toffee hue, strains through cloth, and sets cup on table's sunlit rectangle to cool. As brew steeps, laudanum weaves drowsy veil across senses. Clock tick slows, distant hen cluck echoes from miles away. She fights urge to nap sitting upright. Drowsiness tempts, but she knows opiate dream is fragile, easily shattered into dizziness. While waiting, she tends blister forming on heel, leather kiss from midday climb. Needle puncture, fluid bead, dab of lampblack salve, strip of cloth wound twice then knotted. She flexes ankle experimentally. Pain reduces from shout to murmur. List complete. She grants herself chair's comfort. Cup of willow bark tea now drinkable. Bitter as regret yet chased by subtle sweetness of horehound shard dissolved within. Each sip cools throat, strokes nerves, convinces pulse to release hammer. Outside, late afternoon light shifts toward ochre. Sun's ferocity spent, leaving behind warmth gentle as featherbed. Clara rests elbows on table, head in palms. She counts swallows, one to honor those lost to fever, another for neighbor's boy healing from snakebite, a third for herself, acknowledging resilience. Laudanum and willow perform duet. One dulls ache, the other soothes inflammation. She feels edges of room soften, sounds blur. Yet discipline keeps her anchored. She sets cup down half full, refusing to indulge sedation beyond necessity. Even relief must answer to ration books. She closes ledger, tucks needle, linen, salve back onto shelf. Everything in place, so when next ailment knocks at midnight, she can navigate by memory alone. Her fingers linger over small glass vial of quinine. Precious, rare, saved for malarial shivers summer sometimes carries up the river. She whispers wordless promise that no one will need it this year. Finally, she steps outside, letting breeze pinch cheeks awake. Sunset's first rose-tint sky. Headache recedes like low tide. Splinter sight throbs but no longer commands. The mare flicks ear at her presence. Prairie exhales hush colored by crickets warming up for twilight recital. Clara draws breath scented with sage and distant rain evaporating off fence wire. She rotates shoulders, nods. Body, though battered, remains loyal. Mind remains clear enough to remember chores left undone, yet calm enough to greet them slowly. Mid-afternoon ailments may seem trivial in ledger of grand history, but on frontier they form quiet battleground where survival is one splinter, one blister, one headache at a time. There is dignity in these tiny victories, proof that care, though humble, can match hardship stride for stride. Should your own body carry echoes of ache tonight, imagine Clara's willow bark tea cooling in beam of westering light. Borrow a sip in your mind's throat. Let bitterness wash pain toward horizon. Then close eyes, release tension, and believe with frontier certainty that dawn will find you mended enough to walk another mile. Chapter 9. Supper by Sunset. The last tooth of the sun has barely slipped behind the long, low ridge when Clara kneels beside her cook fire and exhales a day-length sigh into the violet light. The sigh carries wood smoke, dust, a thread of peppermint sweetness, and the relief of having arrived. Boots, bones, and battered spirit, all the way from dawn to dusk without once splintering. She feeds 2 cedary slats into the shallow pit. Sparks leap like fireflies, bright for an instant, then gone. Embers accept the offering with a soft gulping glow, and at once the world smells of resin and of nights when trees told stories before they were lumber and kindling. Suspended above the embers swings a black bean pot, its belly already warm with water that came from the creek at noon, iodine-kissed and carried faithfully. A handful of brown beans, soaked since midday in Clara's tin cup, slides into the simmer. They land with muted plunks, tiny stones dropped into a hush so wide it seems to echo. She adds a ribbon of salt pork, 2 fingers wide, translucent stripes of fat and meat twisting together like a candy cane drawn by hunger instead of a child's hand. Instantly the fire pops in greeting. The fat begins to bloom on the water's surface, gold beads chasing one another in lazy circles that never quite meet. Clara stirs with a spoon whose handle was once the branch of a willow, the bowl carved thin by years of scraping. Each revolution gathers scent. Smoke, salt, earth, and the faint ghost of molasses still clinging to the cedar stirring stick she used last winter. Steam climbs into the darkening sky. It carries a warmth that settles on Clara's cheeks. For the first time in hours the skin there feels soft instead of wind-scoured. While the beans coax themselves toward tenderness, she tends to coffee, though the tin holds chicory more than bean. 2 spoonfuls fall into the pot that doubles as her morning wash basin. Water follows, then the lid. She balances it on the coals opposite the beans in a silent act of diplomacy. Neither pot will steal the other's heat. From the stole bag she draws supper's meager company. Half a raw onion, a sliver of hard cheese gifted by Mr. Stoddard, 3 peppermint sticks, and a knob of cornbread wrapped in the cleanest scrap of calico she owns. The cornbread is 2 days old, firm, crumbly, faintly sweet like a story you almost remember. She slices the onion atop a tin plate. Knife point clicks against metal. Translucent crescents tumble like miniature moons. Each cut releases juices so sharp they could polish brass, and tears smart her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the honest chemistry of survival. The mare, picketed a dozen paces away, flicks an ear at that crisp scent. then lowers her muzzle to resume the slow rhythm of chewing dusk-damp grass. An unspoken pact holds between woman and horse. What feeds one tonight will carry the other tomorrow. Beans bubble now, small burps that break the gloss of fat. Clara lifts the lid. Aroma billows outward in a sigh richer than coins. She sprinkles in onion slivers, a palm pinch of coarse salt, and 3 good shakes of dried red pepper seeds saved in the corner of a paper envelope. The seeds float, then slowly drown, releasing color the shade of last light clinging to the west. She replaces the lid and lets patience do what haste never could. While she waits, Clara sits cross-legged in the dust. The ground is still warm. It gives back every sun-baked insult like an apology. She unwraps the cornbread, splits it down its crumbly spine, and lays both halves crossed side down on an ember-kissed flat stone. Whispered sizzling begins almost immediately. Nearby, the peppermint sticks, bright spiral twins, catch what little light remains. They look absurdly festive against drab earth, as if holiday confetti drifted in on a stray December breeze and forgot to leave. Clara smiles at the silliness, then pockets the smile for later use. When she turns the cornbread, its underside shows a lacy char, imperfections that promise texture. She rubs a sliver of cheese across the crust. The heat coaxes it into a slow, yielding melt that pools in the bread's every valley. The smell is farmhouse sharp, childhood remembered through distance. Coffee, really chicory, chooses that moment to boil. She drags the pot aside, wraps the lid twice to settle grounds, and pours a half-cup's worth into her enamel mug. The liquid is midnight incarnate with edges of garnet where it catches flame glow. Finally, the bean pot yields. Clara removes the lid and the fire sighs in relief. She dips the spoon, lifting beans, pork, onion, and broth so thick it clings like memory. She tastes. Heat blooms across tongue. Sweetness of bean meets salt of pork meets mischievous nip of pepper. She nods once, verdict rendered. Serving is simple. Spoonfuls ladled onto the now empty cornbread wrapper, crust set beside them like edible shovel, mug of chicory at the ready. No porcelain, no linen, just dinner delivered straight from earth to hands. Between bites she watches evening unwrap the first stars. They appear timid at first, single lanterns in an enormous dark ban loft. Then more flicker on, emboldened by company, until sky becomes a scattered congregation of distant hearth fires, each one tended by a far-off family she will never meet. Crickets test night's acoustics. A coyote offers a tentative yip, as if clearing his throat before the real song. The mare shifts weight and size, the deep, round exhalation that only an animal without guile can manage. Meal wanes, gratitude swells. Clara wipes her spoon clean with a pinch of dust, a frontier scouring pad, then slides it into her boot top where it will ride safely till morning. She swirls a thumb of chicory around the mug to catch stubborn grounds, drinks, and feels warmth trace a line from mouth to belly, a small ember stoked within. For dessert, if the word can stretch to fit this dusk, she snaps a peppermint stick in half. One shard taps her own lips, the other she carries to the mare, who accepts it with comical flair, upper lip wiggling, eyes soft. Sugar is rare for horses and humans alike. Tonight both savor the extravagance. Embers slump, fiery bones gone to ash. Beans cool in their pot, destined for tomorrow's breakfast. Clara stacks stones atop the glowing bed, starving it gently of breath. Up above, one star falls, silver scratch against indigo, and she grants it no grand wish, only a simple one, that this ordinary piece might choose to linger. She stands, stretches arms until shoulders crackle louder than the dying fire, and turns toward the cabin where a straw tick and wool blanket wait. Behind her, horizon still smolders faint orange. Ahead, the cabin window flickers dim amber, calling her name in a hush older than language. And you, listening from your own warm pocket of darkness, may let this supper settle inside you as softly as it did inside Clara. Beans, bread, sugar, and gratitude folded beneath the blanket of night. If sleep comes now, greet it the way a cooling ember greets the ash, without resistance, without hurry, glowing only as long as it yearns to glow. Chapter 10: After Dark Dangers. Night on the prairie arrives as a hush with teeth. It is not the theatrical darkness of city alleyways, but a vast, deliberate black that presses its forehead to the cabin windows and peers inside, studying the shapes that glow behind thin glass. Inside, Clara banks the stove. A final cedar slat slides into coals, flares, then subsides into an amber sigh. She lowers the damper. Metal groans the way an old dog settles onto tired bones. In that half-lit calm she listens, truly listens, to the silence left over when flames finish their sentences. First she notes the tap-tap of a beetle against the log wall, searching for warmer seams. Then the whisper of ash collapsing in the stove, soft as paper folding. And beneath it all, a deeper cadence, her own heartbeat, steady but alert, like a distant drum marking the edge of ceremony. She bars the door. Oak plank meets slot with a decisive thunk. Outside, coyotes strike up an indecisive chorus, one high yip, another answering in a minor key, before lapsing into wary quiet. Their silence is more unnerving than their song. Mischief prefers cover. Clara lifts the Spencer rifle from wall pegs. She does not chamber around, only checks the lever, strokes barrel steel that still holds the chill of evening. The rifle is less a weapon tonight than a lullaby. Its weight, its familiarity, the promise folded into its oiled mechanism that danger can be answered if it insists on calling by name. She sets the rifle within arm's reach of the tick, then kneels to blow out the lantern. Darkness crashes inward like a velvet wave. For 3 long breaths she lets her pupils widen, drinking the faint silver that seeps around shutter slats. Shapes emerge: stove door, chair back, the gentle mound of coffee tin on the shelf. A floorboard pops, cooler air shrinking its grain. Clara's shoulders soften. She knows that timber's accent. But another sound follows, a pad of earth, a sniff beneath window ledge. She waits, spine a taut bowstring strung with breath. The sniff repeats, closer now, then the scratch of claws against wood. Raccoon, she decides, lured by beanpot scent left to soak. She raps the window frame twice with knuckle. Outside, startled paws scrabble away, scattering dirt. The night exhales relief. Clara smiles, tension unspooling. Predators come in many sizes, so do victories. Sliding under blankets, she lets the straw tick creak its greeting. One hand slips to the floor where the peppermint tin rests. She taps lid twice, a small habit that started in childhood to prove the world still obeys her gentlest request. The tin answers with hollow clink, and that is enough. Eyes closed now, she invites memory forward. The sound of her mother's tread across porch planks back in Missouri, fireflies caught in mason jars, a quilt smelling of lilac. Each memory dims the pulse of vigilance. But frontier sleep is light. An hour drifts by, clouds part. Moonlight threads a gap in shutters, sketching a pale stripe across cabin floor. In its path, dust motes pirouette, tiny phantoms stirred by the same draft that kisses Clara's cheek, waking her halfway. She listens again. Coyote's father now, conversation low and satisfied. Perhaps they found a jackrabbit careless at burrow's edge. Wind combs grass with steady fingers. No storm scent rides it. Yet another noise lingers. A metallic tap, distant yet purposeful. It comes again. Tap, tap, tap. Clara rolls from tick, feet silent. Rifle lifted, she edges to door, pressing ear to cool plank. The tapping repeats, iron striking iron, but slow, hesitant. She pictures the windmill half a mile downslope. One broken vane sometimes spins, knocking the pump rod when gusts align just so. She exhales, lowers rifle. No trespasser haunts the yard, only restless machinery chasing ghosts of wind. She smiles into dark, grateful for lessons. Knowledge is lighter to carry than fear. Back in bed, she lets shoulders melt. Tick crinkles, straw resettling around the contours of another long day. She counts breaths, 4 in, 5 out, matching rhythm to Mare's soft snore outside the shutter. The animal dreams, hooves twitch, nostrils huff. Perhaps she runs free across endless midnight prairie. Clara lets that image carry her. She rides behind the dreaming mare, hair streaming silver in moonwash. Coyotes flanking but never closing. Windmill singing its odd metronome far away. In dream distance, the tapping becomes a lullaby, and the very darkness she feared now rocks her like gently swaying grass. At last, eyelids drop anchor. Thoughts ripple once, twice, then still. And should some watch appear through that barred door, they would see nothing remarkable. Only a woman asleep, rifle resting, fire dying, night doing what nights always do, testing the hinges, trying the latch, then wandering off to look for looser doors. If you, too, feel those tests, a faint rattle at your window, a coyote howl threaded through city sirens, remember Clara's lesson. Measure the sound, name it, meet it with breath rather than panic, and let knowledge turn danger into just one more nocturnal verse. Chapter 11. Weather at its whim. Pain on the frontier is never quite absent. At best it is folded, like a small map, into the pocket of every hour. By lantern glow, Clara sits on the cabin floor, bare feet crossed, knees pitched outward, needle flashing in slow arcs as she dans the elbow of her work shirt. The lantern's flame dances inside the glass chimney, amber and patient. On the table beside her lies a little still life of necessary hurts. A tin of salve black as fresh tar, a stopper bottle of willow bark tincture, and a strip of linen boiled 3 times for purity. These humble items make up the whole frontier apothecary, half science, half whispered hope. Thread pulls through cloth, hush scrape, hush scrape. She ties off, snips, rotates the shirt, and runs callous thumb across the mend. Strong enough, she decides. Strong enough is the frontier's version of perfect. There is an inventory of aches tonight. The blister on her heel she lanced at noon sits tender but calm beneath its bandage. 2 splinters, 1 cedar, 1 oak, are gone, replaced by the faintage that heralds knitting flesh. The headache born of iron-heavy storm clouds has retreated to a memory. Yet new stings arrive. Shoulders complain where fence post weight lingered. Left thumb throbs, pinched when she snapped old wire. And behind ribcage, a slow stitch reminds her she inhaled too sharply at the first lightning strike. Frontier bodies are ledgers written in bruises, scratches, and half-healed strains. She opens the willow bark vial, measures 10 drops into the spoon, no more, no less. A swallow of creek water sends the bitterness down. Another rinse clears her tongue. She waits, breathing evenly. Salicin will take its time loosening tendons, but patience is medicine too. From a clay jar labeled tallow and pine rosin, she scoops a pea-sized smear and works it into knuckles gone stiff with fence twisting. The salve smells of winter hearths and midsummer forests, opposites blended into comfort. Skin shines where it sinks in, tiny ridges of old scars turning briefly to satin. Across the room hangs a crude anatomy sketch, a torso drawn in charcoal, rib numbers, rough heart shape, arrows noting liver and lung. Clara made it after reading half a medical pamphlet mailed to the town doctor in exchange for eggs. She studies it now by lantern light, tracing each organ with her gaze in silent gratitude. Heart first, a little bellows, hammering quietly all day, never striking the same stone twice yet wearing a canyon through time. Lungs, twin wings tucked inside a cage, fluttering 20,000 times since dawn without once asking reward save air. Stomach, alchemist's crucible that accepted beans, cornbread, and peppermint, turning them into tomorrow's miles. She thinks of neighbors, old Mr. Howe, who limps since the horse threw him, young Elsie, whose cough deepens each winter, Mrs. Nguyen, forever darning socks round-shouldered beside her own stove. All hold bodies patched like quilts, each square a story of healed almost wounds. Frontier survival, Clara muses, is not heroic battles but quiet stitches. Skin closing, bones knitting, spirits rustling upright again after every unseen topple. She ties a final knot in the shirt seam, smooths it once, and folds the garment on her lap. Work finished, she sets needle point down in its cotton scrap. Tomorrow she will need it again. Lantern wick gutters. She trims the char. Flame steadies, softer now. The cut wick smells faintly of burnt sugar. Clara stands, stretches arms heavenward. Tendons sing, shoulders yield. A yawn unfurls, huge, unstoppable. She lets it carry the last clinging shards of vigilance away. At wash basin, she pours half dip of water, splashes face. Droplets fall from chin to shirt front. Cool Morse code spelling rest. She drinks the rest of the dipper slowly, feeling liquid trace the familiar path down throat, sternum, belly. Before crawling into bed, she glances once more at the charcoal torso. "Thank you," she whispers. The body, ever humble, answers only with pulse. She smiles, banking stove coals one final time. Glow dwindles, red to ember to after-image. Outside, wind hums through fresh damp grass, a lullaby written neither in major nor minor key, but in the simple meter of breath. "Lie down," the wind says, and she does, blanket to chin, eyes to dark rafters. Muscles slacken, repaired cloth of shirt and skin alike relaxes. In the hush, her heartbeat slows until it matches that wind-breathed tempo. Should your own body carry its own ledger of aches, screens glare in the temples, chair edge pressed into spines, borrow Clara's salve of quiet. Thank each tendon. Breathe willow bark prayers into lungs. Imagine lantern light soft over knuckles. Let drowsiness settle on you like pine-scented balm, seeping into thoughts scar deep. And when the tick-tock clock hands ease past the wounds of this day, know that you, too, are strong enough being the frontier's perfect. Chapter 12. The Fragile Frontier Body. At last, the night stands absolute and unchallenged. The stove sleeps, the lantern sleeps. Even the restless wind has tiptoed off to tussle with distant cottonwoods. Clara, cocooned in straw tick and wool, breathes a long note that drops an octave into dream. The prairie itself seems to inhale, millions of grass blades lifting imperceptibly, as though stretching after the day's scald. Stars overhead glisten, unblinking, sewn into darkness with silver thread. Out here, time passes by the scrape of fence wire, the hiss of fresh rain, the hush of peppermint dissolving on a tongue. Yet inside your room, this room where your device glows faint, you feel a different pulse. Refrigerator click, city hush, or suburban night lull. Both are worthy, both fragile, and both, for these few minutes, share one breath. Close your eyes, truly close them. Behind lids, let memory project tonight's quiet reel. Cedar sparks spiraling upward, coffee steaming at dawn, fence wire vibrating like a faint violin, thunder rolling gutter to gutter across the sky. Feel each scene unspool slower than real time, until frames blur into drifting shapes. Now, invite your modern comforts into that film. See Clara's cabin stove backed by the gentle blink of a thermostat. Her tin cup sits beside your double-walled tumbler. The mare's soft snore blends with the hush of traffic a mile off. These worlds overlap without tension, like two transparent veils. Breathe in, the weight of blankets here, the imagined cool of prairie night there. Breathe out, any ache still caught in joints, any chatter stuck behind eyes. Again, slow tide in, slower tide out. Let thoughts soften to simple facts. You are warm. You are sheltered. You have water closer than any creek. You have light at the flick of a finger, yet you choose darkness now, because darkness is gentle on closing eyes. Count 4 heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Imagine each is a hoofbeat of Clara's dreaming mare. With every beat, the horse carries you farther from daylight's bramble of tasks, deeper into the open grassland of sleep. Somewhere, coyotes yip, faint, a lullaby you don't quite recall upon waking. Somewhere, a city bus hisses its hydraulic sigh. Between them, you float, not here, not there, but in the gentle seam our 2 centuries share. If you wake later, remember, dawn will slip peach gold across both skylines, over pasture and parking lot alike. The stove will need stirring, or the kettle, or perhaps only the switch of a bedside lamp. Meet that light unhurried, as Clara does. Rise slow, stretch grateful, and speak kindness to the first task that greets you. For now, though, drowse. Let pulse drift toward that soft place where even names dissolve. In strawbed cabin or pillow-cool room, surrender to the single command the prairie and the city agree upon. Rest, traveler. Rest and mend. Lantern fades. Screen darkens. Only breath remains. Yours, Clara's, and the world's, all braided into one low tide. Nothing more is required.